In this video, I'll be reviewing the Siemens EQ700 Classic. It has a retail price of around £900 and it promises barista quality coffee at the touch of a button. But does it? I'm Scott and I've spent the past decade in the world of coffee podcasting and publishing. Now, can this machine really live up to its claims? First off, for full transparency, Siemens sent me this machine for review, but they have no stipulations on what I actually say about it. So this is my brutally honest review of the EQ700. Now, before we dive in, let's be clear about what this machine actually is. On the box, it calls an automatic espresso machine. I'd prefer to call this a super automatic or a bean to cup machine. And much like pod machines and mocha pots, depending on the coffee you put in, these can produce really good, strong coffee. But as a coffee purist, I wouldn't say this creates a true espresso. Now, depending on how loose your definition is, this can fall into the broader definition of espresso, but look, I'm being a bit of a pedant here. Now, the promise of a bean to cup machine is exactly that. Beans in, coffee out, nice and easy. So let's test it out. Overall impressions are the build quality of this is very good. It has a decent heft to it, it weighs about 10 kilos dry, and Siemens is a very reputable brand. There is a fair amount of piano black shiny plastic with some metallic parts on here. But with aesthetics, it's a subjective thing. So if this fits in with your kitchen decor, then that's all good. The front has this large touch screen here and very of the moment. I see a lot of domestic coffee machines with these touch screens. What I would say, which is interesting about the shape of this, is it's quite narrow, but it's also quite tall and it is also very deep. So it does sit right to the edge of your countertop. So it has quite an efficient footprint. As I mentioned, it's also quite tall, so if you do have low counters, you may need to drag this out to pull up the top here and fill it with beans. It is very, very good if you've got limited counter space. Now, as well as the main machine here, it comes with a little kit. And in here you have things like your cleaning tablets, water softening cartridge, test strips for checking water hardness, and this, which is a little rubber hose with a little straw on the end, and we'll get to this much later. The machine has a really decent 2.4 litre tank on the side, which is good because this thing loves to rinse. One thing to be aware of is that it's only got a 1 metre cable on it, so you will need to put it quite close to a plug socket, as you shouldn't really use extension cables with products like this. So now let's talk about the smart features. Now look, I know everything is connected to the internet these days, and this machine is no exception. You're encouraged to download the Siemens app and then set up an account. And then you'll need to pair the device, which will then connect to Wi-Fi, update itself, reboot a few times. I think it's clever, but I'm just not entirely convinced it adds much to the coffee making experience. Yes, you can set the machine running to make your coffee while you're not there via the app, but I would have to set the machine up first, especially if I want a milk-based drink. So I'd have to put the cup and the milk there before I want to get it running. And these machines are pretty quick. So look, I'm going to call this as a nice to have, but it's a bit of a gimmick. So one of the things this machine prides itself on is the amount of parameters that you can change for each of these drinks. So I'm going to go into the espresso menu now and show you how it works. So we go into espresso and we're going to click the icon there. And this opens a secondary menu. Now here you have 3 different parameters. You've got strength at the top. So you can go 1 which is light, 2 which is normal, and 3 which is strong. To get the next level, the extra strong, we then get this menu come up saying this is a double shot. And so what that means is it's going to brew 2 shots, one after the other in the machine. So the machine will run its cycle twice and you'll get twice the amount of liquid. Below that, we have 4 cups, and that ranges anything from a 35 ml up to a 50 ml of water, which is being used to brew the shot. Then finally, at the bottom here, you have aroma, and it starts at mild, balanced, and distinctive. Once you've chosen what you want to do with this, you can then add this as a favorite. You pick a lovely colour, save that, and that then goes into your favourites menu. So let's brew an espresso. I'm going to put my glass under here. I'm going to pull down this column here so it's nice and close to the cup. Don't get any splashing now. I'm going to choose from my favourites my espresso. I've gone for a single strong shot. I'm going to go 40 mils and I've got distinctive aroma. So there we go, our espresso is ready. I'm going to take it out there. And that looks a pretty good shot. I'm going to give it a taste. And that's pretty balanced actually. I think what we need to understand about these is because this isn't really a true espresso, we have to sort of lengthen the shots to keep the balance. Now, I mentioned earlier that I didn't think this was a true espresso, and I know this looks like crema, but I think what we've actually got here is a little bit of a sleight of hand, and this is sort of manufacturing crema through aeration. So where crema is a sign of freshness in the beans, and it is created by the volatile gases, this, I believe, is created through aeration, which is a little trick that's happening inside the machine here. So next up, I'm going to make a milk-based drink because I think that this machine is probably best targeted towards people that like that sort of, cafe experience. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to go into my Coffee World panel here, and I'm going to find the flat white. It's the drink that I would probably drink most if I was out in a cafe. And I have two settings that I can play with here. I've got the strength, and then I've got the cup size. So I'm going to go for a strong coffee, and then I'm going to put the cup size up to 160 mils. Now, it's a little bit complicated now, so please bear with me. I'm going to put my cup underneath there, but obviously I need some milk now. If you remember, I talked about this little rubber tube before. This goes in the side of the machine here. It goes in, and it's a rubber tube with a straw on the end. I'm going to put this milk on the side here, precariously balanced, I know, and then I'm going to drop in the straw. This is the one thing which is a little bit sketchy for me, is sits quite high up against the edge of the counter, and so you have to think about yourself, where are you going to put this? So I'm going to start here. So it looks like we're done with the brewing process. There we go. Please empty the drip tray. But this is now done, and we'll give it a bit of a taste. Yeah, I would say that it's not as strong as I would expect a coffee to come from a cafe. But then what we also have to understand is that these are not brewing to the same sort of strengths, and they're not brewing to the same quantities as you would in a cafe. I think I've measured this, and the dose of coffee that's used for each shot is around sort of 10 grams. So now there has been some criticism online about the coffee not being hot enough. I don't get that. I think this is perfectly good. I can imagine if you really, really wanted very hot coffee, if you're the kind of person that asks for extra hot coffee, that might not be right for here, but this is perfect for just drinking straight away. So here's where I think we need to get a little bit more nerdy and give you some context about why I think this machine works probably better with darker roasts than more specialty coffee blends, and also why I probably wouldn't call this true espresso. And it all has to do with what's in the back here. So I'm going to take the water tank off, and then take off the side piece, and then pull out the brew chamber. So this is where all the magic happens. Now this is the nerdy bit, so don't worry, it won't take too long. So the fundamental issue on all of these types of machines is this brew chamber system. Now James Hoffman has done a brilliant video on this, and I'll link that in the description below. But what we're looking here is to get the coffee to come in contact with the water so we can extract all the real goodness out of those beans. Even at its finest setting, it's still quite coarse. And as you can see from these samples, the one on the left is from the Siemens machine and the one on the right is from my own grinder. The second thing is the coffee dosing. The coffee on the left is from the Siemens machine and it's about 10 grams. Now you'd usually use 16 to 18 grams in a conventional espresso machine or something you'd get in a cafe. So due to both the coarser grind and the smaller dose, the contact time is going to be quicker. So you're going to generally be left with a weaker coffee. Now, if you think of this in the same ratios, what you're probably getting here is something more akin to a lungo than an espresso. Now, another one of the party tricks of this machine is the amount of different drinks that you can make with it. I think it's something like 21 different drinks, and these can all be adapted to your taste. These are all accessed via the panel here, and it comes in these 3 tabs. You've got your favorites, which is just things you want to save, your classics, and these are everything from an espresso, a cafe crema, cafe grande, cappuccino, and then you've got your coffee world tab. Now on here you've got slightly more unusual drinks or things you might not have heard of before, everything from a ristretto to cold brews, vina melange, and coffee vercurd. And each one of these you can go into and you can set them up how you want. And what's really good fun is just trying out these different recipes and seeing what you like. So to wrap up, who is this coffee machine for? Well, I think it's for someone who wants milk-based drinks at the press of a button, who isn't maybe a coffee snob, users that are happier with dark roasts, maybe homes where they're upgrading from a pod machine or a mocha pot, but people who really value convenience over perfection. Who I potentially wouldn't recommend this for though are those that are really into espresso and love getting dialed in and they want to get really nerdy with the details. You know, the kind of people that maybe want to make coffee as a hobby. So my final verdict on the EQ700. Is it a good bean to cup machine? Yes, I think it is. In the overall standing of bean to cups machines, I think this is a pretty good option. It's about mid-price in the category, and I think it gives you a lot of options. It gives you a lot of ways that you can change and dial in your brew. I hope you enjoyed this video. Let me know in the comments if you've bought one of these and how you fare with it. And thanks for watching.